Good afternoon. This is Mr. Precella, and today we're going to be discussing signed numbers, adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing signed numbers. There's one rule that I don't even need to state, and that's how to add two positive numbers. Everyone knows a positive plus a positive equals a positive. So we'll start off with what about two negatives? How do you add two negative numbers? A negative plus a negative is a negative. And then just add what's called their absolute values. Add the 47 and 22. 47 plus 22 would be 69. So negative 47 plus negative 22 is negative 69. Now let's do another one right now. Problem number, I'm just numbering these. Example number 2. How about this one? 21 plus a negative 14. So we've already seen to add two negatives, you just keep the negative and add the 47 and 22. Now, what about adding a positive and a negative? Well, to add a positive and a negative, what you're going to do is subtract what's called their absolute values. That's the number without a negative on it. So subtract the 21 and the 14. That would be 7. And then you take the sign of the bigger number. Well, the bigger one was 21. 21's bigger than 14. So positive 7. But if you're doing something like my math class, you don't put a positive in front of that. You just type in a 7 for an answer. Okay? So to add two negatives, you just add them up and keep the negative. To add a positive and a negative, you subtract, take the sign of the bigger number. Here's another one. How about this one? Three. Let's see. Negative 100 plus a positive 85. Negative 100 plus a positive 85. Well, here we're adding a positive and a negative, so you follow these same rules. Subtract the 85 and the 100. 100 minus 85 is a 15. And which number is bigger, the 100 or the 85? Well, the 100 is bigger, so take the sign of the bigger number. Negative 100 plus 85 is negative 15. If you think of this in terms of dollars and cents, or just dollars, a negative $100 would mean that you're $100 in debt. You owe someone $100. You pay them $85. Now you're $15 in debt. Sometimes people wonder, why do we have to have negative numbers? As soon as credit existed, there was negative numbers. As soon as someone loaned someone else money. Well, what about now subtracting? So here's how to add. To add two negatives, just add them up, keep the negative. To add a positive and negative, you subtract, take the sign of the bigger. How do we subtract sign numbers? Let's look at this. It'd be a negative 2 minus a positive 6. Well, to subtract sign numbers, first thing you do, it's going to seem a little strange. Change the subtraction symbol to plus. So change the subtraction to a plus, and then change the sign of the second number. Can y'all read my writing? I hope so. So I've changed the minus to a plus. Now I change the second number so that 6 becomes a negative 6. And what kind of problem do we have now? Well, it's an addition of two negatives. Negative 2 plus negative 6. How did we say we add two negatives? Well, you just add them up. Keep the negative. Oh, who is that? Who has that cell phone that they forgot to turn off? Oh, shame on you. Actually, I'm joking. That was me. I forgot to turn my cell phone off. Any of you that actually have had me in a face-to-face class, you know I'm never too upset about cell phones going off like that. It's only when we start doing stuff like brain surgery I get really upset if the cell phones go off. Okay, so when that happens, in face-to-face classes, I'll cut it off as fast as possible. Okay, so let's do another subtraction problem. How about this one? Negative 8 minus a negative 5. In order to subtract sign numbers, change the subtraction symbol to a plus. Let me see. I'm wondering if I have my red pen. Okay, so I'm changing this to a plus. And then change the sign of the second number. So this negative 5 needs to be a positive 5. So here's what we have. We have a negative 8 plus 5. Now, how do we add a positive and a negative number? Oh, that's what we were doing up here. Subtract, take the sign of the bigger. Okay? In order to subtract sign numbers, you're writing it as addition, so you can use the rules for adding signed numbers. So negative 8 plus 5. Subtract, take the sign of the bigger. Here's another one. 40 minus 41. Oh, by the way, going back up here, when you see this minus and negative, a lot of times you'll hear people state the rule, okay, a minus and negative is just a plus. So if you see a problem with a minus negative, it becomes just a plus. What about number 6? 40 minus 41. Change the subtraction to addition. Change the sign of the next number, or the second number. So 40 plus a negative 41. How do we add a positive and a negative? Well, you subtract them. Take the sign of the bigger one. So negative 1 is our answer there. Another example. 3 minus a negative 7. Back to what I just finished saying a while ago. If you see two minuses, you could just write it as a plus. What do I mean by that? Change the sign of the negative. Change the subtraction symbol to plus. Then change the sign on this next number. So notice it's 3 plus 7. So 3 minus a negative 7 is 3 plus 7. And everyone knows that is 10. Okay? Not problem, but I'm numbering these because, well, I want to try to distinguish one problem from the other. In the last video I made, I didn't number them, and I was drawing squiggly lines to separate them. I think it works out better this way. Okay? So how about, let's see, do I want to do another subtraction? Here's this one. Negative 3 minus 11. Negative 3 minus 11. Well, here's my pink. Change subtraction to plus. Change the sign of the next number. That's what I was doing here, to subtract. Negative 3 plus a negative 11. What's the rule for adding two negative? Okay, so it's negative 3 plus a negative 11, as it looks better just in one color there. That would be a negative 14. Negative plus negative is negative. Okay, so enough of adding and subtracting. How do we go about multiplying signed numbers? Multiplication and division. Well, the rule is true for multiplication and division. Okay, both. We already know a positive times a positive is a positive. Well, if you have a negative number times a negative number, that's a positive. And that same rule is true for division. So if you had negative divided by negative, it would be positive. Now, if you had one negative times one positive, that will give you a negative. And the same statement would be true if it were positive times negative. If you have one positive times one negative, the answer is negative. If you have two negatives, negative times negative, the answer is positive. So let's do some of these. Generally in algebra, we don't see the x's used for multiplication because we'll use those for the variable x. So let's see, I've done 8 problems. Here's another one. Problem 9. Negative 7. I'm putting a dot for times positive 5. Well, to multiply the 7 and 5, just multiply those like normal. The question is the answer going to be positive 35 or negative 35? Well, it's going to be negative. One negative times one positive is a negative. Let's do one with some bigger numbers. And sometimes this is how you'll see multiplication written with parentheses. Negative 22 times a negative 10. Here, these two sets of parentheses mean multiplication. Well, if you have a calculator, you might want to punch in. All of this you could punch into a calculator. Negative 7 times 5, negative 35. But if you're having to do that for every little calculation, oh wow, you're never going to get finished with all the problems. These are things you should be able to do quickly in your head without having to punch negative 7 times 5 into a calculator. Like here, negative 22 times 10, you should know without having to use a calculator, the answer is positive. Negative times negative is positive. So a positive, let's see. A positive, what's 22 times 10? Is that 220? So negative 22 times negative 10 is a positive 220. See, another one. Let me think. How about 15 times a negative 13? So this is one you might want to use a calculator on for the 15 times 13, okay? But for the answer to it being positive or negative, hopefully you know that. Positive 15 times a negative 13 is what? Positive or negative? It is negative. And then 15 times 13, is that 195? If you doubt it, you might pull out your calculator and check it. But 15 times 13 is 195. Positive times negative is negative. Okay. My computer screensaver is set to go off too soon. Here, I'm using a school computer. So, these same rules are true for division. If you're dividing and you have a positive and a negative, the answer is negative. If you're dividing and they're both negative, the answer is positive. So let's do a division problem. How about something pretty easy? 18 divided by a negative 6. The purpose here is to make sure you know those rules, how to get the positive or negative. If these numbers are just too large, I can use a calculator. But for things with small numbers, especially stuff that's just directly from the multiplication tables, you really should be able to do those without a calculator. This is one you should be able to do without a calculator. If you're dividing and one number's positive and one number's negative, the answer is negative. And then just divide 18 divided by 6, that's a 3. Let's see, what about this one? Let's get something pretty big. Negative 225 divided by, look, I'm writing the division as a fraction key, or fraction bar, divided by negative 25. Negative 225 divided by negative 25. Can y'all tell me if it's positive or negative? Negative divided by negative is y'all agree, positive? If they're both negative, then the answer is a positive. What's 225 divided by 25? That is a 9. So negative 225 divided by negative 25 is a positive 9. Number 14. If I seem distracted at times while I'm making this video, yesterday I was on campus and there was a really nice pregnant kitty cat that came right up to me. I don't know how she wound up there. And she was so hungry, I fed her and ultimately brought her home, and she's having her babies right now in the room next to me as I'm here making this video. So that's why I might seem a little bit distracted. Although she can take care of it herself. So I have friends trying to find fosters, and maybe eventually Once the mother and babies are old enough, we can get her into the cattery. I'm one of those crazy people that you might see going along campus, eating the cats or picking up a cat if they're in distress or something. But enough about that. Number 14, negative 36 divided by a positive 9. Now, this is one you do not need a calculator for. One number's negative and one of them's positive. When dividing, that means your answer is negative 36 divided by 9. You know that from the multiplication tables. 4. See, is everyone following this? Those are the rules of this assignment. How do you add two signed numbers? How do you add a positive and a negative for multiplying? If you multiply or divide two negatives, the answer is positive. If you multiply and divide with one positive, one negative, the answer is negative. So let's see. How about a negative 56 divided by a negative 7. Negative 56 divided by negative 7. What's the answer going to be? Positive or negative? Well, negative divided by negative is positive. 56 divided by 7 is 8. Okay? So hopefully this has jogged your memory on those rules, and you really need to know those rules. Now, at some time or another, I want to mention something. I guess right now is as good a time as any, since we just finished some division. Division by 0 is undefined. Division by 0 is undefined. What do I mean by that? Well, if you have a division problem, it doesn't even need to involve negative numbers. Something like this, 56 divided by 0. Or if it were written as a fraction, 56 over 0. If you have a number over 0, that answer will be undefined. And I'm mentioning this because sometimes in my math lab, when you have a problem like this, it might give you the option to write undefined as the answer. Only way a division would be undefined is if the second number was 0. If you write it like this, a number over 0, undefined. It's when it spells no that it's undefined. And you might see that pop up in your homework, but you might not, okay? But as you progress this throughout your math career, whenever you hear someone talking about a fraction being undefined, that means that the bottom number is 0, okay? So, thank you for watching this video, and I hope you're having a pleasant day. I'm going to go check on the mother cat that's giving birth in the room right beside me here. So, thank you, and goodbye.